All right, let's dive into a really interesting, kind of tricky question at the heart of U.S. law. You see a law and it says, the president has to do something. So, who does that actually mean? Now, the answer seems obvious, right? But as we're about to find out, it's a whole lot more complex and way more important than you might think.
So let's just do a quick thought experiment. A law gives the president the power to take some kind of action. If that ends up in a court case, who pops into your head? Who do you see standing there in the courtroom? Is it the president himself sitting at the plaintiff's table? I mean, for most of us, that's the first image that comes to mind.
And you know what? In a way, your common sense is spot on. The law really is giving power to the president. But, and this is the big but, that is not the whole legal story, not by a long shot. When it comes to how the legal system actually works, there's a really crucial difference we have to get our heads around. Okay, so this right here gets to the absolute core of it. On one hand, when a law says the president, it's talking about the constitutional office, the institution, the power, the whole shebang. But on the other hand, when we're talking about who's in the courtroom, that same term, the president, does not mean the person who's actually arguing the case. So let's put a pin in this with a clear definition. In the world of federal law, when you see the president, it means the holder of the executive power granted by Article 2 of the Constitution. It's a way of talking about the authority of the office, not a specific person who has to physically do every single thing themselves.
And here's the thing. This isn't some special one-off rule just for the White House. It's actually a super common legal shorthand. The exact same logic applies if a law mentions, say, the Secretary of State or the Speaker of the House. The law is giving power to the position, not demanding that the person in that job has to personally go file the motions or argue in front of a judge.
Okay, so that obviously leads us to the next big question, right? If the person whose name is on the tin isn't the one who shows up to court, then who is? Who actually does the work? Who represents the government's interests?
Well, the answer is laid out really clearly for us in federal law. Specifically, if you're curious, it's in Title 28 of the U.S. Code, sections 516 through 519. This is basically the rulebook for who gets to represent the United States in court.
And what this rulebook does is set up a very clear chain of command. At the top, you have the Attorney General, who has the exclusive power to handle lawsuits for the U.S. government. Then you've got the U.S. attorneys, who do the day-to-day work under the AG's supervision. And in this whole setup, the president and the executive branch, well, they're the client.
I know this all sounds a little abstract, so let's make it real. There's a powerful, real-world example that shows exactly how this all plays out.
I mean, think about one of the most serious federal laws we have, Title 18, Section 1751. This is the law that makes assassinating the president a federal crime. The statute itself is literally about the president.
So let's apply what we've just been talking about. If this absolutely horrific crime were to happen, who would be in charge of bringing that case? The law names the president, but who's the prosecutor?
And here's where it all clicks. The lawsuit wouldn't be the president versus the defendant. No way. It would be the United States versus the defendant. And the lawyers handling the case would be from the Department of Justice, acting for the entire nation, not as the president's personal attorneys.
So that brings us to the main event, the key takeaway. If you only remember one thing from all this, let it be the difference between being the client and being the actor.
It's really just like any other legal situation. The law might be about you, but it's your lawyer who actually goes to court and does the talking. It's the same principle here. The president is the client whose authority is on the line, but the Department of Justice is the lawyer. They're the ones who are the courtroom actor.
And listen, this is so much more than just a piece of legal trivia. It's fundamental to the rule of law. This separation makes sure that legal action is taken on behalf of the United States as a country, not just because one person wants it to happen. It's a core idea that reminds us that we have a government of laws, not of individuals.
So I'll leave you with this to think about. This whole principle of separating the office from the individual actor is a cornerstone of our legal system. It's there to keep things stable and fair. So the question is, where else in our government do we see this vital idea at work? Thanks for diving into this with me.